Introduction. Whoever thinks of finding in this work only a collection of recipes with which he can achieve fame, wealth, and power without any effort, or else he intends to defeat his enemies, he will surely be disappointed and give up listening to this audio. Many sects and spiritual schools see in the term magic nothing more than simple witchcraft and covenants with obscure powers. So it is not surprising when the mere mention of the word already causes the kind of horror in certain people. The conjurers, stage magicians, charlatans, or as they are called, make a misuse of the concept of magic, which to this day has contributed so much that this magical knowledge was always treated with a certain disdain. Already in ancient times magicians were considered great initiates, even the word magic comes from them. The so-called magicians are not initiated, but only forgers of mysteries who, generally take advantage of the ignorance and credulity of an individual, or of a whole people, to achieve their selfish goals through deception and lies. But the true magician despises this procedure. In fact, magic is a divine science. In the true sense of the word, it is the knowledge of all knowledge, for it teaches us how to know and use the universal laws. There is no difference between magic and mysticism, or any other concept with that name, when it comes to true initiation. Without considering the name that this or that worldview gives it, it must be realized following the same basis, the same universal laws. Taking into account the universal laws of polarity between good and evil, active and passive, light and shadow, all science can be applied to evil or beneficial goals. A knife that normally only has to be used to cut the bread in the hands of a murderer can turn into a dangerous weapon. The determinants are always the particularities of the character of each individual. This statement applies also to all spheres of secret knowledge. In this audio, I chose for my students, as symbol of initiation and higher knowledge, the denomination magic. Many listeners know that the tarot is not just a card game intended for divination, but rather a symbolic initiatory book containing great secrets. The first letter of this book is the wizard that configures the field of elements, and has the key to the first arcane, the mystery whose name is unpronounceable, the tetragrammaton, the Jard, he vow minus he Kabbalistic. That is why the door of initiation is the magician, and the hearer of this work will be able to recognize the wide range of applications of this letter, and how significant it is. In no work published so far the true meaning of the first tarot card was so clearly described as in this my audio. This system, mounted with the utmost care and extreme consideration, is not a speculative method, but the positive result of 30 years of research, practical exercises and repeated comparisons with many other systems of the most diverse Masonic lodges, secret societies, and of Oriental wisdom, accessible only to the exceptionally gifted, and some rare elect. So it's good to remember, starting from my own practice, and going against the practice of many, which certainly has already been approved, especially by my students, and considered the best and most useful of systems. Even so, it has not been said, and I do not want to say, that this audio does not describe all the problems of magic or mysticism. If we wanted to write everything about such high knowledge, then we would have to fill whole compendiums. But it can certainly be said that this work is really the gateway to true initiation, the first key to the use of universal laws. Nor do I deny that in works of several authors, we can find here and there some explanatory passages, but the listener will hardly find such a precise description of the first letter of the tarot in a single book. I did not spare my efforts to be as clear as I could at every stage of the course by taking the great truths accessible to anyone, though I found it difficult to put them into simple words so that they could be understood by all. If this effort has worked, it is a statement that I leave to the listeners. In some cases, I had to deliberately repeat certain statements to emphasize some particularly important passages and to spare the listener from a possible job of constantly repeating the audio. I have often heard people complain that interested people and students of the occult sciences would not have the opportunity to be personally initiated by a teacher or guru, and that, because of this, access to true knowledge would only be possible for the exceptionally gifted or blessed. Many of the true seekers would be obliged to consult piles of books so that, at least here and there, they could fish some real pearl. Therefore, those who are seriously concerned with their own evolution, and who wish to obtain this sacred knowledge, not only out of sheer curiosity, or the satisfaction of their most immediate passions, will find in this work the right guide to initiation. No incarnate initiate, no matter how high his degree of initiation, can offer the student for his early learning more than is offered in this audio. If the sincere student and attentive listener finds in this audio what he has so far sought in vain, then the work has fulfilled its mission. The author. The figure of the magician, the first letter of the tarot. Explanation of its symbolism. The mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms are symbolically expressed at the bottom of the chart. The woman on the left and the man on the right are the plus and the minus of the person. In the midst of them there is a hermaphrodite being, man and woman in a single person, as a sign of the balance between masculine and feminine principles. The electric and magnetic fluids are represented by the colors red and blue, the electric fluid by the red and the magnetic by the blue. In the woman the region of the head is electric of red color, and the genital region is magnetic of blue color. In man the reverse occurs. On the hermaphrodite there is the globe, as the mark of the terrestrial sphere on which the magician with the four elements is configured. On the man are the active elements, the fire element in the red color, and the air in the blue color. On the woman are the passive elements, the water element in the green color, and the element earth in the yellow color. The medium, rising to the degree IA, figure of the magician to the terrestrial sphere, is dark violet as a sign of the Akasha principle. On the head of the magician is drawn a silver lotus flower, with a gold frame, and a band invisible as a crown. It is the sign of divinity. Inside it a red stone, a ruby, which is the stone of the sages, is also the symbol of the quintessence of all Hermetic science. In the background on the right is the sun, golden yellow, and to the left the moon, white silvery, like plus and minus in macro and microcosm, or electric and magnetic fluids. On the lotus flower the creation is symbolized by a sphere, which in its interior depicts the symbol of the generative force plus and minus, the creative and generating act of the universe. The endless, eternal, unlimited, and uncreated is symbolically expressed by the word Om, and by the dark violet color to black. The great secret of the tetragrammaton or the Jati I have been Kabbalistic. What is above is also what is below. Hermes Trismegistus by Franz Bardon 1. About the elements all that was created, the macrocosm and the microcosm, therefore the great and the small worlds, were formed through the elements. Because of this, I intend, at the beginning of the initiation, to occupy myself justly with these forces, and especially to show their depth and their multiple meaning. To this day, very little has been said in occult literature about the forces of the elements, so I decided to take up the task of dealing with this, still unexplained subject, and to erect the veils that cover its laws. It is not at all easy to enlighten the uninitiated in order to bring to their knowledge not only the existence and action of these elements, but also to give such readers the possibility of working later with these forces in practice. The whole universe matches the mechanism of a clock, with mutually dependent gears. Even the concept of divinity as the highest reaching entity can be classified in a manner analogous to the elements in certain respects. There are more details about this in the chapter dealing with the concept of God. In the earlier Eastern writings, the elements are defined by the tatwas. In our European literature, only we give them attention in that emphasize its good effects or aim their unfavorable influences, which means, therefore, that under the influence of tatwas certain actions can be taken forward or should be left aside. There is no doubt about the authenticity of this fact, but everything that has been revealed to us today points only to a very restricted aspect of the effects of the elements. Proof of the effects of the elements in relation to the tatwas, for personal use, is sufficiently explicit in astrological works. But I go deeper into the secret of the elements, and so I choose another key, analogous to the astrological one, but that has nothing to do with it. I intend to teach you the many ways to use this hitherto unknown key to the reader. I deal with each of the functions, analogies and effects of the elements, in sequence and in more detail, in subsequent chapters. In addition to unveiling its theoretical side, I also show its practical use, for it is precisely in it that the greatest arcanum resides. On this great secret, knowledge of the elements has already been written in the oldest book of esoteric wisdom, the Tarot, whose first letter, the Magician, represents knowledge and mastery of the elements. In this first letter the symbols are, the sword, which symbolizes the fire element, the stick, which symbolizes the air element, the chalice, the water element, to the earth element coins. Here we can see that in the ancient mysteries, the Magician was pointed out as the first card of the tarot, and so the mastery of the elements was chosen as the first act of initiation. In honor of this tradition, also I want to devote most attention especially to these elements, because, as we shall see, the key to the elements is a universal medium with which you can solve all the problems that arise. According to the Indians, the sequence of the tatwas is as follows: Akasha, the etheric principle; Tejas, the principle of fire; Waju, the principle of air; Apas, the principle of water; black egg, red triangle, blue circle, crescent, silver prithvi, the principle of the earth, square yellow. According to Hindu doctrine, the four denser tatwas formed from the fifth tatwa, the Akashic principle. Hence the Akasha is the original principle, and is regarded as the fifth force, the so-called quintessence. More detailed clarifications about the Akasha, the subtlest element of all, will be presented to the listener in the corresponding chapter. The specific characteristics of each element will also be mentioned in all subsequent chapters, beginning with the higher planes and descending to the denser, lower matter. As the listener himself will realize, it will not be an easy task to analyze such a great secret of creation, and put it into words, so as to give everyone the possibility of entering into it and constructing a plastic image of it. Later on, I will also speak about the decomposition of the elements, as well as show their practical value, so that every scientist, whether chemist, physician, hypnotist, occultist, magician, mystic, Kabbalist, yogi, I can extract from this his use in practice. If I can inform the listener to the point where I can at least allow him to penetrate this subject, knowing how to use the practice key in that field of knowledge that appeals to him most, then the purpose of my audio has been reached. The principle of fire, or Texas, red triangle. As we have had occasion to mention, the Akasha, or etheric principle, is the origin of the creation of the elements. The first element that, according to Eastern writings, was born of the Akasha, is Texas, the principle of fire. This element, like all others, acts not only in our dense, material plane, but in everything created. The basic characteristics of the fire principle are heat and expansion. That is why at the beginning of creation everything was fire and light. The Bible also says, "Fiat lux, let there be light." Of course, the basis of light is fire. Each element, including fire, has two polarities, the active and the passive. L is plus and minus, more and less. Plus is constructive, creative, generative, while minus is the disintegrator, exterminator. You should always consider these two basic characteristics of each element. Religions attribute good to the active side and evil to the passive side, but in principle good and evil do not exist. They are just concepts of the human condition. In the universe there are no good or bad things, for everything was created according to immutable laws. It is precisely in these laws that the divine principle is reflected, and only in the possession of the knowledge of these laws can we approach the divine. The explosion is inherent in the fire principle, and will be defined as an electric fluid for the purpose of forming an image. Under this nominal concept is understood not only the material, dense electricity, in spite of having an analogous condition, as we shall see below. Naturally, it becomes clear to anyone that the characteristic of expansion is identical to that of extension. This principle of the fire element is active and latent in all that has been created, therefore in the whole universe, from the smallest grain of sand to the highest visible and invisible things. The principle of water, or apis, silver crescent. In the previous chapter we learn about the creation and characteristics of the positive element fire. In this chapter 1 described the opposite principle, that of water. Like fire, it also formed from the Akasha, the etheric principle. In comparison with fire, however, it has totally opposite characteristics. Its basic characteristics are cold and retrocal. Here there are also two opoles, the active pole, which is constructive, life-giving, nutrient and preserver, and the negative, equal to that of fire, disintegrator, fermenter, decomposer, sink. As the water element has in itself the basic characteristic of retraction, it gave rise to the magnetic fluid. Both fire and water act in all regions. According to the law of creation, the principle of fire could not exist if it did not contain an opposite pole, that is, the principle of water. These two elements, fire and water, are those basic elements with which everything was created. Because of this is that everywhere we always have to rely on two main elements, as opposed polarities in addition to the magnetic and electric fluid. The principle of the air, or waju, blue circle. Another element that formed from the Akasha is air. Initiates regard this principle not as a real element, but place it in an intermediate position between the principle of fire and that of water. The principle of air, as a medium, so to speak, produces a neutral balance between the passive and active effects of fire and water. Through the alternating effects of the passive and active elements of fire and water, all created life took up movement. In its intermediary role, the aerial principle assumed the characteristic of heat, and of water to moisture. Without these two characteristics life would not be possible. Moreover, they also give the air principle, two polarities, the positive effect and the giving of life, and in the negative, the exterminator. As for the aforementioned elements, we must add that they are not common fire, water, and air, in fact, only aspects of the dense material plane, but rather the universal characteristics of the elements. The principle of the earth or Prithvi, yellow square. We have already said that the principle of air does not properly represent an element in itself, and this statement applies also to the principle of the earth. This means that, from the alternating effect of the three elements mentioned first, the earth element has finally formed, for through its specific, characteristic, and solidification it integrates into itself the other three. It was precisely this characteristic that gave a concrete form to the three elements. At the same time, however, a limit was introduced to its effect, which resulted in the creation of space, size, weight, and time. Together with the earth, the reciprocal effect of the other three elements became 4- polar. The fluid in the polarity of earth element is electromagnetic. As all elements are active in the fourth element, that of the earth, all created life can be explained. It was through the materialization of life in this element that the fiat, the make-up, came about. Further detailed account of the specific effects of the elements in the various spheres and kingdoms, as in the realm of nature, the animal kingdom, the human realm, may be found in the subsequent content of the audio. What is important is that the reader can get a general idea of the functioning and effects of the principles of the elements throughout the universe. The light, the principle of fire, is the basis of light. Without him the light could never exist. That is why it is one aspect of fire. All elements of fire can be converted into light and vice versa. That is why light contains all the specific characteristics. It is luminous, penetrating, expansive. The opposite of light is darkness, which arose from the principle of water, and has the specific characteristics opposite to those of light. Without the darkness, the light would not only be unrecognizable, as it could not exist. Thus we can perceive that light and darkness arose from the alternation of two elements, that is, fire and water. In its effect, light has the positive characteristic, and darkness has the negative. This alternation occurs in all regions. The akasha, or the etheric principle, black egg. In the description of the elements, I mentioned that they arose from the etheric principle. Because of this, he is the highest oval, the most powerful and unimaginable. He is the origin, the foundation of all things and of all creation. In short, it is the primordial sphere. This is why the akasha is free of space and time. He is the uncreated, the incomprehensible, the indefinable. Religions call it God. He is the fifth force, the primordial force. It is that which contains everything that was created and that keeps everything in balance. It is the origin and purity of all thoughts and ideas. It is the world of primordial things in which everything created has been maintained, from the highest to the lowest. It is the quintessence of the alchemists. It is all in all things. And law of cause and effect. An immutable law that has its characteristic aspect precisely in the Akasha principle is the law of cause and effect. Every cause has a corresponding effect. This law is everywhere valid as the supreme law, so every action has as consequence a certain effect or product. Therefore, should be considered not only a law for our good deeds, as Eastern philosophy preaches, but, as we can see in this case, its meaning goes much deeper. Instinctively, people feel that all good produces only good fruits and that all evil results in the production of bad things, or as the people's mouth says, what a man sows, he reaps. This irrevocable law must be known and respected by all. The law of cause and effect is also inherent in the principles of the elements. I do not want to deepen the details of this law, which in fact can be expressed in a few words, because they are clear and logical to the mind of anyone. The law of evolution or development is also subordinated to the law of cause and effect. That is why development is an aspect of the law of the human body. Man is the true image of God, therefore he was created according to the picture of the universe. Everything that is found in the universe on a larger scale is reflected in man on a smaller scale. That is why man is defined as a microcosm, as opposed to the universe as a macrocosm. To the letter, we can say that in man is reflected all the nature, and the purpose of this chapter is to teach, to observe, to know and to dominate this truth. I do not intend here to describe the physical processes of the body, for this description can be found in any specialized work. What I want is to teach the listeners how to observe man from the Hermetic point of view, and how to use the basic key in it. It is the effects of the elements. There is a famous saying that says, in a healthy body, a sound mind. In the study of man we shall see how profound and true the statement of this little phrase is. But surely you will ask, what, after all, is health from the Hermetic point of view? Not everyone will be able to answer this question immediately. Most will give a fairly individual explanation to the health issue. From the Hermetic point of view, health is regarded as a total harmony of the forces that operate in the body, relative to the basic characteristics of the elements. There is not even the need for the predominance of a very large disharmony of the elements, so that the effect becomes visible in the form of something we call sickness. Disharmony in the form of disease is already an important disturbance in the regions of the body in which the elements operate. That is why the future initiate should consider as a basic condition a careful attention with his body. The external expression of the body is like a beautiful garment, and in all respects, both in the greater and the lesser, beauty is also an aspect of the divine nature. Beauty is not only what pleases us, or is nice to us, for sympathy and antipathy depend on the reciprocal effects of the elements. Effective health is much more a basic condition for spiritual upliftment. If we want to live well, we have to clean our house, so does our body, which must be beautiful and harmonious. According to the universal law, the elements have certain functions in the body, especially the construction, the maintenance and the decomposition. The positive part of the body, is the constructive one, corresponds to the positive or active side of the elements. The maintaining or compensating part is ensured by the aggregating function of the elements, the neutral, and the decomposing, or deteriorating part is commanded by the negative characteristics of the elements. Thus, for example, it is the principle of fire, in its active form, with its electric fluid, the expansive, constructive and active activity, and in its negative form the opposite. The principle of water in its active form influences the construction activity of the various liquids in the body, and in its negative form, decomposing activity. The principle of air has the function of regulating the electric fluid of the fire, and the magnetic fluid of the water in the body, and keeping them in balance. Hence, it is defined as the neutral element or mediator. As was said in the basic key on the forces of the principle of the earth, the latter has the function of keeping aggregated the functions of the other three elements. In the active form of the element of the earth principle, the effect is vitalizing, strengthening, constructing, maintaining, and in its negative form it is the opposite. At the beginning of the earth corresponds both progress or growth, as well as the aging of the body. We could still present many analogies about the effects of the elements in the body, but the above explanation should in principle be sufficient. The initiates of all time have never described in detail the effects of the elements, probably to prevent their misuse, but they knew them very well. They divided the man into three basic concepts, assigning the head to the principle of fire, the belly to the water, and the thorax to the air, the latter as the mediating principle between fire and water. At first sight, it is evident that the initiates correctly defined this division of man. For everything that is active, therefore, that which is igneous, occurs in the head, while in the womb, the opposite occurs. L is the work of liquids, aqueous, eliminator. The thorax is subordinate to the air and has, in the same way, a mediating role, because the breathing that occurs there is mechanical. Finally, the principle of the earth, with its cohesion or its aggregating force, makes up the whole human body, with all its bones and its flesh. But one will always ask, where and how does the akasha, or etheric principle, appear in the dense material body? After a deeper reflection, everyone may answer this question for themselves, that is, that the etheric principle in its dense material form is contained in blood and semen, and in the reciprocal effect of the latter on vital matter or vitality. As we saw earlier, the fire element produces the electric fluid in the body, and the water element produces the magnetic element. Each of these fluids has two poles of irradiation, the active and the passive, and the reciprocal direct and alternating effects of the four poles is equal to a quadrupole magnet, identical to the mystery of tetragrammaton, the jarred vow minus the Kabbalists. That is why the electromagnetic fluid in the human body, in its irradiation to the outside, is the vital magnetism, called O, or any other name you wish to give. In the right-handed person, the right side of the body is electric active, and the left side magnetic passive. In the left-handed person the opposite occurs. The intensity of irradiation of this electromagnetic fluid depends on the capacity, L is, of the intensity of the effect of the elements on the body. The more healthy and harmoniously the effect of the elements in the body operates, the stronger and more pure the irradiation will be. With the help of certain exercises, as well as through correct posture and precise observation of these laws, the ability and intensity of action of this electromagnetic fluid, or ode, may increase or decrease as needed. How this occurs will be described in more detail in the practical part of this work. Both the electric and the magnetic fluid have no direct relation to the electricity or magnetism we know of, but they are analogous to it. This law of analogy is a very important factor in Hermetic science, and its knowledge enables the initiate to perform, with this key, great miracles. In nutrition these elements are mixed. Its assimilation triggers a chemical process through which the elements remain in our body. From the medical point of view, the assimilation of any nutrient, together with the respiration, triggers a combustion process, in which the hermetist sees much more than a simple chemical process. He sees the fusion of nutrients as well as the fire that is constantly kept lit through the burning matter. That is why all life depends on the continuous input of combustible material, i.e., food and breath. In order for each element to receive its necessary maintenance material, a mixed feed, containing all the basic materials of the elements is recommended. If, for example, we were forced to spend our whole lives depending on a single nutrient, then our body would certainly become sick, i.e., would become disharmonious. Through the decomposition of air and nutrients, the elements receive the material that preserves them, thus maintaining the vigor of their activity. This is man's natural way of life. If there is a lack of so-called triggering matter in any of the elements, the effect on the corresponding functions is immediate. For example, when the effect of the fire element on the body intensifies, then we feel thirst. In the case of the element air, we feel hungry. In the element of the water, we feel cold. And in that of the earth element, we install the fatigue. Likewise, any saturation of the elements in the body causes intensified reactions. With the excess of the fire element installed a need for movement and activity. With that of the water element, the deterioration process intensifies. A saturation of the air element shows us that we must measure the assimilation of nutrition, and a saturation of the earth element exerts its effects on aspects of the sex life, but it is not necessarily evident in the sexual urge of the flesh. Generally, in older people, this effect can also be externalized by stimulating greater activity at work and greater creative performance. In its passive and active polarities, the electric and magnetic fluids have the function of producing the chemical compounds from the chemical point of view, or possibly alchemical, in all the organic and inorganic bodies. In the active sense, they are constructive, and in the negative, disintegrating, decomposing, and destructive. This explains the biological function of the body. The result is the cycle of life. It rises, grows, matures, and dies. This is the fate of the evolution of all creation. Diet. A sensible way of life maintains the harmony of the elements in the body. When there is a disharmony in the effect of the elements, that is, when there is a predominance or a weakening of one or another element, some measures must be taken to balance them again, or at least to interfere favorably in that sense. That is why, in specific cases, we usually prescribe the most diverse diets. The first time the filming came to be closed through several observations, but unable to understand the precise causes of the phenomena. When a disturbance of symptoms is so great, a visible disharmony, then it is no more a disharmony, but an illness. Therefore, the media must be adapted to complete harmony, to have complete health around the normal rhythm. On the article are based all the curing methods known to date. I prefer to abstain from describing each method of treatment. The natural types of healing are used: thermal baths, such as baths, compresses, poultices, herbs, massages, etc. The allopath uses the concentrates to produce the necessary effects and thus promote health recovery. The homeopath stimulates the eventive frame of its remedy, similia, similibus, curanture, to recover the balance of the threatened factor, according to its polarity. When applying their remedies, homeopath age directly on the electric and magnetic fluids, to make their strengthening balance the disharmonious element, depending on the type of illness. Polarity. Each healing method aims to restore the commitment of the elements. Through the knowledge of the elements in our body, the magnetopata ou magnetizador tem uma grande possibilidade de ser capaz de controlar com sucesso suas forças, especialmente quando ele é capaz de conscientemente despertar em si mesmo o fluido elétrico ou magnético, fortalece-lo e transmite-lo a parte do corpo que está em desarmonia. Dedica capítulo inteiro deste audio a parte prática desse tipo de tratamento. As funcos completas do corpo também devem ser descritas aqui, mas, analogamente a eles, efeitos dos elementos, no corpo, carda partidul, tambum, influenciada por elemento específico atuando en sua polaridade, o que interessante o feito de que alguns órgãos contam no ritmo de sua operação, portanto, em seu mecanismo, uma alternância do fluido elétrico de dentro para fora e o fluido magnético de fora para dentro, similarly to equilibrium. In other organs, however, the contrary occurs. The electric fluid ages from inside to outside and magnetic from inside out. This knowledge of polarized irradiation is called, in Hermetic science, hidden anatomy of the body. The knowledge of processes that anatomy conceals is important in the early members, if they want to know, influence and control their body. Please do the following here: a hidden anatomy of the human body in relation to electrical and magnetic fluids, therefore, within the scope of positive and negative information. The magnetopata. What are the reasons why it can be treated as a high-potency substance with the electric fluid or plastic dot? This knowledge is also very useful for people. The head. The front part is electric, a magnetic back. The right side is magnetic, the electric paradise. The interior is electric, the eyes. The anterior part is neutral, a back is also neutral. The right side is electric, the left side is also electric. The interior is magnetic. The ears. The anterior part is neutral, a back is also neutral. The right side is magnetic, the left side is electric, the interior is neutral. Mouth and language. The anterior part is neutral, the posterior part is also neutral. The right side is neutral, the continent is also neutral. The interior is magnetic. The neck. The anterior part is magnetic, the back is magnetic, the right side is magnetic, the left side is electric, the interior is electric. The thorax. The anterior part is electromagnetic, the back is electric, the right side is neutral, the left side is electric, and the interior is neutral. The belly. The anterior part is electric, the back is magnetic, the right side is magnetic, the inside is magnetic. Like hands. The front part is neutral, the back is neutral, the right side is magnetic, the left side is electric, the interior is neutral. The fingers of the right hand. The front and rear panels are neutral, open and suspended, the interior is neutral. The fingers of the left hand. The front and back sides of the right side are electric, the left side is also electric, the interior is neutral. The feet. The front and back are neutral, the right side is magnetic, the left side is electric, the interior is neutral. Molly. Genital organs. The anterior part is electric, the back is neutral, the sides are neutral, and the inside is magnetic. The genital organs. Feminine. The anterior part is magnetic, the back is neutral, the right side and the left are neutral, the inside is electric. Ultima columna verso em conjunto com Venus. The front and back are neutral, the right and left are neutral, the inside is magnetic. Based on this hidden anatomy, the launch can, with a key of the quadruple magnetico, compose other analogies according to the need. And in this anatomy the alchemist is also the human body Athener, in which o mecum polito processo, alquimico, grand obra a preparacao de pedra dos sabios, occurs, visible. And here ends the chapter on the human body, not pretending that the related subjects are approached by the subject in any way. I believe that I mentioned more importantly, the one sent to the elements, to the emers, de quadruplo, and unraveled the mystery of the tetragrammaton applied to the body.